Welcome to Real Talk with Andres and Heather, the podcast where we say the quiet part out loud about real estate, business, and the situations nobody warns you about. All while we're live streaming, so there are no edits.
Just like this, right? And this isn't coaching from a stage or highlight reels from social media. This is real stories, real mistakes, real money, and real consequences from agents, buyers, and sellers, and business owners living it in real time. So if you're tired of the sugar coated advice, fake gurus, and playing small because nobody tells you how this really works, you're in the right place. I'm Andres, and this is Heather. Let's get into some real talk.
All right, let's get into it. So it's a new week for us here. We were on spring break this week, not spring break, winter break, I guess. Yeah, winter break. So the kids are finally back to school. How about you guys? Were you guys on winter break the past week?
No, just President's Day's off yesterday. Um, so I'm glad she's back to school. I think she has a week coming up next month in March. But the school year seems to go by quite fast. Maybe because I'm not in school, right? But she may think otherwise. But from an outside perspective, I think it goes by quite fast.
It does seem like it goes by quite fast. And then they have a lot of breaks that we didn't have. It's almost like they're year round school. I remember when I went to school, we had like 2 weeks for Christmas, 2 days for Thanksgiving, and then a week for spring break. And then we had like 3 months off during the summer. And now I feel like with my kids, they get like a week off every other month and then several digital learning days every month. So it's and 2 months for the summer, not 3 months. So it's a completely different ball game than from when I was in school.
Yeah, same here. I think she starts at the early August. In October, she has a week off. Then you have Thanksgiving days off. Then you have Christmas days, right? The holidays, and not to mention in September the Labor Day. Then you have January early on, that break that goes in. To February, she has another day off, like today. Next month, she has a whole week off. Then you have April, probably April, about not the only one, the only month with not a day off. But then she's done in third week of May already. So, like you said, every other month seems like they have a week off. So, which goes by quite fast. I wanted to ask you, what infrastructure, real estate, uh, news is happening around your side of town.
Well, things are picking up. We've got quite a few listings right now, so we're just trying to get those sold. I know that no matter what the market is, you're always going to have somebody complain, right? You're going to have people say, "Oh, a buyer market's better or a seller market's better," and there's challenges with every market. Um, but it does seem that now it's kind of leveling out from where it was before. Things are selling. I know last year we went through a period where it was like nothing was selling and it was taking forever to get these listings sold. But we're seeing a lot more action, a lot more showing requests, more offers coming through. So things are picking up. And that's to be expected this time of year because we're getting to the end of winter, we're getting to spring, the school year's ending, and that's typically when people start looking is when the school year ends because they don't want to be moving mid-school year. It's much easier to move kids over the summer. So nobody ever really can predict or know what's going to happen in the market, but I think now that things are settling down, the school year is ending, things will start picking up even more. What
That's
about you
good.
guys? How's it looking over there?
Um, it's going. It's going. I usually get some good traffic in open houses. I've been hosting open houses the past few weeks. Get good traffic. Seems like sales are happening throughout. There's a lot of action happening. A lot of people think that it's not doing otherwise, but there's things moving. There's opportunities. You've seen the videos of the new construction. There's a lot of that going. A lot of great deals that you can find out there. So certainly not as slow as people think it is. So I'm glad for that. One thing I wanted to talk about here today, as far as things happening in my area because I was at an open house 2 weeks ago, and one of the guy that shows up went by. We were talking about the traffic and the infrastructure here in the area, and he sent me a post this morning and said, "Hey, this is exactly what we were talking about last, 2 weeks ago, where there's over 380 million invested into upgrading the infrastructure for traffic, expanding the roads, adding bridges, and things like that." And one of the things that I mentioned and I noticed is that there's projects that could have been done, but they keep adding new projects and delaying the completion of some other projects because they move their staff to get that other project started on that phase. And over time, the people that are being affected by this is the residents, right? We'll continue to pay taxes towards the funds of these projects that are not being completed because they keep getting delayed, and more people keep moving into the area. So it's just a cycle over the past few years where you have these projects keep stretching their time frame, budgets keep expanding, more people keep moving, and of course everything around feels more congested. So it's little details like that that we see here. Quite the number of projects that they keep adding to improve, but not finish. So you have people that are not from the area, saying, "Hey, this traffic is bad here. It sucks." Mind you, people coming from California, where it takes you hours to get somewhere for certain days, and but just the infrastructure, not nowhere needs to be
Yeah.
for the number of people moving in town. So it kind of sucks, but at the same time, it's great to see all the potential and everything that's happening because there's a lot of pieces moving, but certainly doesn't feel like it sometimes, right?
It doesn't. Sometimes, I look at that too. I drive past a bunch of new constructions and you'll see half built projects and then another one starting, and you're like, who's buying these houses? Like, with the economy these days. And I especially wonder that when we talked about this the other day, I'm driving out in the mountains and I see new construction and I'm like, who's buying these new constructions out here when you're like 3 hours away from everything and at least an hour away from any type of like corporate job you could go to where there would be an office building. But I mean, people are, because clearly they're funding them and they're building them. I actually have some stats for you. In the greater Atlanta area, we have your average days on market for January was 42. So that was our average day on market. We have our sales price for the greater Atlanta area. The average was about 400,000. And then we have closed sales would have been for the month of January 2,696 closings in FMLS in the greater Atlanta area. So to be 40, what did I say days on market was? 42. That's a pretty big, uh, you know, improvement what it was before. So like if you're looking at like a year ago, things were just sitting.
Yeah. Over here, it's about 40, 45 last month, 45 days on the market, you know. So it's going. Sales have dropped over the past month to 858, and supply has also dropped at 4.1 month supply. So it's up and down. We certainly see a trend, over the past few months compared to how it was same time last year. So it's it's going right. So that's good. That's good. That's good. So today, one of our favorite segment. What would you do scenario, Heather?
Let's get into it. Let's hear this story. I'm excited. And just a reminder for everybody, I don't know the stories on Tuesday, and Andres doesn't know the stories on Thursday. So we're hearing it for the first time. So my reaction is going to be just like your reaction. And just a side note that these are fictional scenarios created and they're not based on any real life situations. So any similarities are just purely coincidental.
Absolutely. So let's get into it. So here's the scenario for today, Heather. Assume you met Andres at an open house, and again, I try to stay within the same flow of the past week or so. Assume you met Andres at the open house, and I wasn't pre-approved yet. Just looking around. You introduce him to a lender. You checked in every few weeks. You send listings throughout. You show them houses. You explain the inspections. You talk through the interest rates. You submit a couple of offers. They get rejected. Nothing happens. I mean, you get beat on those offers. Nothing happens. Nothing on the contract. 6, 7 months go by. After all of this, next thing you know, you see the sold sign, offer accepted on Instagram post for that client. And it's with another agent from another brokerage you were not aware of whatsoever. So, what are your thoughts? You know, you work with this person for 6, 7 months. You show them all the properties. You submit offers. You get beat on some of those offers, and this happens quite often. Believe it or not, I've seen cases where you know agents is confused or know what happened. So, what would you do? What would you reach out to Andres and congratulate them? Will you ask what happened? Would you quietly remove them from your follow up list? What would you do?
So first, I guess, am I so if I assume, am I going to be correct in assuming that the BBA expired and we weren't, if they have a new agent, or is this they hired another agent while I still was signed to a BBA with them? Because those two totally different scenarios.
Let let's assume two things. One, let's say you walk through them, you never sign a BBA, and two, the BBA expired.
Okay. So in the first scenario, if I did all of that and I don't know how I was like full on representing them without a BBA. Like if I'm submitting offers and all of that and I don't have a BBA, that's crazy talk. So that's on me. That one would be completely on me for not getting assigned BBA. Because basically, there's nothing legally, really tying us together. Um, and then if the BBA expired, right? That was the second one. It expired.
Yeah.
Um, Again, that's on me because like I should have been right there saying, hey, reminding them the market situation that we're trying, we're submitting all these offers. And if I knew the BBA was going to be expiring, I should have been like, hey, we need to, extend this. We need to make sure that we're still covered so that I can still represent you. It kind of seems like if they were able to go through an entire process with a whole nother agent of, you know, looking at houses, finding houses, getting getting, I don't know if their pre-approval was still good. So if they needed a new pre-approval, submitting an offer, getting accepted, inspections, appraisals, contingencies, and then, getting through all of that and closing. And I wasn't contacting them at all. Like I wasn't the one contacting them at all. Man, I think I deserve to lose that listing. I think the only what would I do would be kicking myself in the ass because I didn't follow up with them, you know?
Yeah, most definitely. But we've seen cases where agents are surprised this happen, right? And I agree with you. I think one, you should not be submitting the offers without the BBA. I think as here in Alabama, you can show houses now without having that agreement in place. But certainly, you need to have an agreement in place when you submit an offer. So if you're someone who's just showing houses, building that relationship, and you never signed a BBA, then you put yourself at that in that position where that person can straight up just go to another agent, ask them to submit that offer for them, and now that's really on you as an agent, right? Because you're not staying on top of that. But like you said, it would certainly feel like I wasn't run for not following up, staying on top of them, and I will call them and ask them, one, congratulate them, and ask them, where could I improve? Where did I fail in that process as far as not not being able to get them to the next final step, to the finish line in that process.
Yeah.
And I think that's where we fail sometimes. We take it personal in a point where we don't ask for feedback on how we can get better, right? Because if I fail to get him to the finish line, why was that, right? Did I not communicate well in the process? Did I not find the right home? What did I do wrong in that process where I lost that deal so close to the finish line?
Well, clearly there was a breakdown in communication. And like where was that? Because at some point there either was or wasn't a conversation. So if the let's go with the BBA is expiring. If the BBA is expiring, it's expiring. What was the conversation? If I'm representing you, that you and I had, was the conversation, you know what, I'm going to take a break from looking. I just want to, take a break, and I don't want to look anymore. I'm frustrated. Let me just have a couple of months, and then we can revisit, looking for a house again. And then I'm like, cool, Andres, I'll give you your space. And then the next thing I know, you bought a house with somebody else. Or was it we never had a conversation at all? Like, I knew it was going to expire. I didn't say anything to you. You didn't say anything to me. You never heard from me again. So you're like, okay, my agent ghosted me. I'm going to find a new agent. Where exactly did this all go wrong when the BBA ended? If we had one in place.
Yeah, I think the second scenario happens quite often, and I've mentioned it to a number of the agents that we work with. Is I feel sometimes the agents ghost the leads, right? Because they may have unrealistic expectations, but as an agent, you need to educate them on what's happening in the process, right? And a lot of times we can easily get discouraged, no follow up with them accordingly, appropriately, and timely. And you see somebody that, okay, they lose faith in working with their agent. Now their motivation is a little bit down. Their hopes are shaken a little bit as far as becoming a homeowner. And you can see that some leads, some people will be like, you know what, this person is not the right fit for me. Let me find somebody that is. And in doing so, like you said, there's no communication from the agent to check in whatsoever on what's going on or how that person is doing or bring some value to the table to that lead. And that person just let that time go. And next thing you know, it's a situation like this where they found somebody else, and next thing you know, they're closing on a deal. When one agent thought it was not feasible anytime soon, somebody else found a way to make it happen for them. And it happens more often than we think, right? But like you said, there's no that breakdown in that communication as far if the BBA is expiring, what didn't work. But most commonly, I see a completely ghost from an agent to the lead, where that lead no longer has, I would say, faith in making that deal, getting to the finish line with that person that they've been working with.
Yeah.
Have you seen or talked to a lead that may be on the edge at some point and be able to bring them back and say, hey, what, let's continue to work together. Let's see what we can do to solve this and move forward.
I had um I've had a lead that, I guess you say, client that I showed a bunch of houses to. We showed a bunch of houses to, and then they kind of got discouraged. And to be honest, this was one that was challenging to work with. So my normal follow up wasn't really there because of how challenging this one was to work with. And then I found out that one day they did buy with somebody else. And honestly, in that situation, I was just like, okay, well, good. That way I'm not having to deal with that anymore. But I think it was a situation too where the BBA that we had expired. I knew in the back of my mind that they were still wanting and eventually going to buy, but I wasn't doing the follow up that I should do. I wasn't contacting them. I wasn't staying top of mind. I wasn't doing anything to make sure that my relationship with that client continued. Um, so I definitely can see from the agent ghosting, the lead or the client, exactly how that can go. Because if you're not reaching out to them, if you're not constantly on top of mind, then yeah, they're just going to go with somebody else because other agents are going to be contacting them. Other agents are going to be, harassing them the way you should to make sure that they're.
Would you say it's a way of, and not from from not from your experience, but from the scenario itself? Would you say is, could the agent be avoiding the conversation in itself?
Oh,
Like,
definitely. Definitely.
rather than telling them, hey, I'm not going to be able to help you, or let's terminate this contract, just a way to ghost them and not allow that time to expire if they feel like they are not able to help that person, and vice versa. Could that be something from the lead trying to avoid that conversation where, okay, I don't want to tell them I no longer want to work with them?
Definitely, because those hard conversations are the ones that people try to avoid, right? Because you don't want to be put in that uncomfortable position. You don't want to tell them, hey, maybe you're afraid to be like, hey, this contract was for 6 months or 9 months or a year, however long it was for, and I couldn't find you a house, so we need to extend it longer so that we can, try to get you into a house. You don't want to have that conversation. You don't want to look like you know, quote unquote failed them as their agent. And the same thing with the lead. Maybe they're just over you and they feel like, they've got their cousin or their brother or whoever telling them, hey, I have this agent that can find you a house. So can you get out of your contract? What do you got to do to get out of your contract? And they know all they have to do is let the time expire. And then they're, able to work with another agent because they don't want to tell you they want out of the contract. I mean, if they were just open and like, hey, this isn't working out. Let's terminate this contract, but they don't want to have that conversation, so they try to avoid it.
And in some cases, there's no agreement, there's no expectation set. But oftentimes, um, it's not that the buyers cheat or try to go with somebody else, right? But they could drift, right? They could get busy in life. They may not see or hear the news that they wanted the first time around, and they can certainly drift into, okay, not putting much effort into this. This is getting too stressful. Let me just let it be. How do you go about securing a relationship with someone, like as a buyer that comes into your circle? What do you recommend someone to secure that relationship, even if the contract is not set, right? The buyer's BBA is not set in place right away. How do you go about securing that relationship? Because it is a business, a relationship, and people that you build trust, even if you don't sign the contract, they'll communicate. They'll be open about the communication. They'll stay around. They'll listen. You're gonna build that trust. How do you go about securing that?
So for me personally, it is about, building that relationship and giving them tangible things that they can have. Because a lot of them, even if they've been through this process before, brought other homes, you still have to treat every situation like almost like it's their first time buying a house, and don't assume they know things. Explain everything. Like I have little guides I give them, I have pamphlets I send them. I make sure they understand everything that's happening, every step, every process, stay in constant communication. And one thing I like to do is I ask them how they like to be communicated with, and then when's the best time to communicate with them. Because if they're a texter and you're calling them and you're not texting them, they're not going to see that as viable communication. They're going to see that as an annoying phone call and you're not really communicating with them. And if they're a phone call person and you're just texting them, they're going to see that as you don't even want to talk to them. You're too busy to pick up the phone and make a phone call. So it's about finding out how they like to be communicated with, making sure you're communicating with them the way they want to be communicated with, and then making sure that you're doing it at times when they're available. Because if they're working a 9 to 5 and they can't get to the phone during those hours, and you're like, oh, I'm an agent who only works 9 to 5, so I don't take after hour phone calls, that's not going to work for them. So it's about making sure that I'm building that connection with them. And then, we talked about boundaries. So obviously I don't want to take phone calls at 2 o'clock in the morning, but I do want to make sure that I'm staying in contact with them, answering all their questions and making them feel very secure, very safe, that they understand what's going on. And I always ask them questions like, does that make sense? Do you understand the process? Do you know where we go next? Things like that, so that they're clearly understanding what's going on.
I think that's such an important aspect of the whole process. Communicating on their terms, how they want to be communicated. I see deals, I see conversations, opportunities being lost because we try to call them twice, one at 8 in the morning, one at 12 o'clock in the afternoon, uh, and they didn't pick up the phone, and now we feel like that person ghosted us, and not realize and not put into perspective that that person also has a life, that that person is, has a family, that that person has a job, that they may not be able to pick up the phone when they call at 8 o'clock in the morning, at 12 o'clock and at noon, right? So we often forget that that's the case, and like you said, it's really asking their preferred method of communication, and when they're available to be able to talk, if they want to talk, or if they want a text message, if they want an email, and yeah, there's too many opportunities being lost because of that. And just a simple question as just asking to put it out there and be able to communicate everything that they need in a way that they're going to be able to receive that communication. So I think it's a valuable detail that goes unnoticed quite a bit. Because, like you said, like we said here, the person can drift if we're not communicating with them on their terms and what they need to understand in the process. They can drift and lose interest in that deal. They can lose interest in you as an agent representing them, and certainly end up with someone that is attentive to their needs and the details that are important for them. So certainly, I think this is a great scenario because we see this happening quite often, and certainly is something that we need to be mindful of as an agent and the way we communicate with our prospects.
So, when I was on Holden Homes team and I was lead buyer's agent, when I was working with the CRM for them, I had different some people call them workflows, some people call them campaigns set up for buyers that were 12 months out, buyers that were 6 months out, and then buyers that were 3 months out. And depending on how far they were out, they would get certain text messages, they would get calls, they would get information, and then depending on where they were, they would switch over from the 12 months to the 6 months to the 3 months to go onto those, and then having another workflow for this very scenario. When you have somebody who doesn't find the house and wants to take a break, or the BBA expires and you didn't find them what they were looking for, having them on some type of automated system at the very least is probably the best idea. That way, you at least have some form of communication going out to them. And you can have once set that up once, and then it's done, and then just have a tagging system where you tag them, BBA expired or something like that, or lost client, something like that, something where you can keep them kind of engaged. That way, it's not just this black hole of communication that they fall into.
Absolutely, and I was just going to ask you that, the assistance that you have to move someone from just looking to committed to eventually, close deal, and like I said, having this automation in place certainly plays a big role in consistency in the business, because there's opportunities in your pipeline that they're buying 6 months from now, 12 months from now, but you also just don't want to leave them in no man's land because somebody else can come up and be able to communicate with them effectively and what they need, and you want to be able to provide them some value, like you said, touch base at least once a month, and integrate the tools that are going to help you do that. So it's essential part of the business, because a lot of people just want to focus, let's be honest, a lot of people just want to focus with prospects that are ready to move forward in the next 60, 90 days.
Yeah.
And that's the way they run their business. By all means, not saying it's wrong, but there's opportunities. Something I hear often is we have to eat 6 months from now, 12 months from now. We have bills to pay 12 months from now, right? And there's people that are not actively looking today, but they'll be looking 6, 12 months from now. So communicate with those people effectively, have the tools integrated in your business to stay on top of mind with these people that are in your, you know, in your pipeline. So make it happen.
And I would also take a look at, in the scenario you said that there were a few offers that were submitted and didn't get accepted. So also need to look at why aren't our offers, getting accepted? What is going on that, we're constantly not getting accepted? And is it that we're not submitting strong offers? Is it that they're being very like nitpicky right off the bat? Are they at the top of their price range so they don't really have any room to really negotiate? Is there a way to make their offers stronger? And maybe that's a conversation you need to have with their lender. Um, but I would look at that too. So my what would you do is be in contact with them more and figure out why our offers aren't being accepted. And is there a way to position our offers to make them stronger?
Absolutely, definitely. See, great point because three offers in and not accepted, and that fell through. That's definitely a conversation that needs to be had. I mean, what are we doing here? What sit down and outline those details to ensure that the next offer goes through and we get you to your new home.
Because I mean, there's a lot of things to consider. When you're submitting an offer, like, are we coming in 20 under asking on every single one, and then also saying we want seller concessions? Because I can see why all our offers are getting, beat
Hey,
out.
but it's a matter of setting the right expectations from the get go. It's if you sit down and have this hard conversation from the beginning and you set up a game plan, then that scenario will probably be prevented overall, right?
Yeah.
So it's really sitting down with them from the beginning and outlining what their relationship is like and the expectations moving forward in that process. If you do that, scenarios like this can be avoided.
There's one thing that it's always a hard lesson for buyers to learn, and it always makes me so sad, is that they'll find the house they love. They love this house. They want to submit an offer, and the offer that they want to submit, is not going to get accepted. And so you tell them, hey, this is where we're at with this house. I know there's multiple offers on this house. I don't think your offer is strong enough to get it accepted. Obviously, I'll submit whatever you want me to submit. I work for you. I'm not going to push you to submit something you don't want me to. But in my opinion, this is not a very strong offer. And they come back with, no, 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 this is what I want to submit. I don't think the house is worth more. And I'll give them the whole, are you sure? My close your eyes, imagine somebody else getting the house. Can you? And they're like, yeah, 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 I'm sure, I'm sure, I'm sure. So I'm like, okay. And then we submit the offer that they want to submit, and they don't get the house. And I hate when that happens, but sometimes they have to lose that first house. Sometimes they do. Sometimes they have to lose that first house to get where they need to be in a realistic mindset of what they need to be offering to, get a home in this market. And again, it depends on the market that you're in. And I've had that happen on a few occasions, and I hate that, but sometimes that is the road that they have to travel.
Yeah, very well said. Uh, Sometimes it's just gonna happen. So, man, it has been great. We're already past our time here, but man, it's it's great to put this out there because, like we've seen time and time again, these type of scenarios happen, and people are surprised when they do, and they're gonna continue to happen. We try to prevent, from our point of view, prevent this from happening. But there are scenarios where you certainly are gonna be like, okay, well, what could I have done differently? And this is here to help us learn from it, and when we see details that could remind us of scenarios like this, then we're able to change the way or just the way we are approaching it and make a change. So it's great.
Yep.
Well, all right, guys, you heard the story. Let us know what you think on what would you do real estate edition. And if this episode made you feel uncomfortable, fired up, or feel seen, good. That's the point. And this show doesn't exist just to entertain, it exists to start conversations, challenge bad advice, and help you make a smarter move in real estate and business.
And if you want to be part of the conversation, not just listening, go to our website, www.realtalkha.live, to join the Real Talk community, to be a spotlight guest, or jump on the show with us and weigh in on what would you do, or am I the asshole?
And do us a favor, like it, share it, and send it to someone who needs to hear it. So,
Also, drop us your opinion in the comments. Let us know where you stand. And don't forget to like and subscribe so you guys never miss an episode. And we'll see you guys on the next one.
see you next time on Real Talk with Heather and Andres.
Bye, guys.